Hello my fellow African brothers and sisters, welcome to Serial Media, where we break down complex issues affecting our continent Africa in a way that it's easy to understand. I am your host Serial Makori, and today we are diving into a topic that has been making headlines for years but remain confusing to many: the M23 rebel group in the DRC Congo. And then the question is, why does M23 exist? What do they want, and why these conflicts persisted for so long? By the end of this episode, you will be having a clear picture of what is happening in the DRC and why it matters to all of us as Africans. Now let's get started. First thing first, what is M23? M23 is a rebel group that operates preliminary in the eastern parts of the DRC, near the borders of Rwanda and Uganda. The name M23 stands for the March 23 movement, and it dates back to the peace agreement. This agreement signed on March 23, 2009 between the Congolese government and a earlier rebel group called CNDP, National Congress for the Defense of the People. M23 claims to be fighting in the rights of ethnic Tutsis in the DRC, who they say they are marginalized and targeted by the government, but their actions include attack on civilians, displacement of communities, and exploitation of the natural resources have drawn widespread condemnation. So, why does M23 exist? To answer that, we need to look at the history of the conflicts in the region. Now, the eastern DRC has been hotspots for the conflicts for decades. This region is incredibly rich in natural resources like gold, coltan, cobalt, minerals that are essentials for everything from smartphones to electric cars. But instead of bringing prosperity, these resources have fueled violence and exploitation. The roots of M23 can be traced back in the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide in the year 1994. After the genocide, many Hutu perpetrators fled the DRC, where they formed armed groups. Rwanda, led by Tutsi-dominated government, pursued these groups into Congolese territory, leading to two devastating wars in the late 1990s and early 2000s. During this time, Rwanda supported Congolese Tutsi militias, including the CNDP, which later morphed into M23. The DRC government, in turn, has accused Rwanda of backing M23 to destabilize the region and exploit resources, a claim Rwanda denied. So, M23 is not just a local issue. It is tied to regional politics, historical grievances, and scramble for resources. Reason as to why M23 has not been defeated. This brings us to the next question. Why hasn't M23 been defeated? To answer this is complicated, my dear Africans. First, you know that Eastern DRC is vast and difficult to govern. The terrain is rugged, and the government in Kinshasa, the capital, has limited the control over the region. This has allowed armed groups like M23 to operate with relative impunity. Secondly, there are allegations of the external support. The DRC and UN experts have accused Rwanda of providing weapons, training, and even troops to M23. Rwanda denies this, but the accusation persists, creating tensions between the two countries. The conflict actually is fueled by economic interest. Control over mining areas means controlling over wealth, and this has created a viscous cycle where armed groups, corrupt officials, and foreign actors all profit from the instability. And finally, the international response has been actually inconsistent. While the UN has a peacekeeping mission in the DRC, that is the MONUSCO, It has struggled into bringing lasting peace. Many Congolese citizens feel let down by the lack of the decisive action. Now, you might be wondering, why should I care about M23 if I don't live in DRC? Here is the reason, my dear Africans. The DRC is the heart of Africa. It is the second largest country in the continent, with immense potential to drive economic growth and development. But as long as the conflict persists, the potential remains untapped. Secondly, the instability in the DRC affects neighboring countries. Refugees fleeing violence often cross into Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and Tanzania, straining resources and creating tensions. And finally, the exploitation of the DRC resources is a continental issue. Many of the resources extracted from the DRC end up in our phones, laptops, cars, and often at the expense of the Congolese lives. As Africans, we have a responsibility to demand ethical sourcing and fair trade. Finally, the M23 conflict is a reminder of the border challenges we face as a continent: weak governance, external interference, and the need for unity. If we want to build a better future, we must address these issues hand-on. Now, what can it be done? What can it be done? There needs to be a genuine commitment to peace from all sides. This means addressing the grievances of marginalized communities, holding perpetrators of violence accountable, and ensuring that the DRC's resources benefit people. Then, also regional cooperation is essential. African Union and regional bodies like East African Community must play a stronger role in mediating the conflict and holding external actors accountable. And we as Africans must raise our voices. We can't afford to be silent while our brothers and sisters suffer. Whether it is through advocacy, supporting ethical business, or simply staying informed, we all have a role to play. And finally, we must remember that the DRC story is not just for one of conflicts. It's also a story of resilience, hope, and unyielding spirits of its people. By standing with the DRC, we stand for a brighter future for all Africans. Thank you for tuning into this episode in Serio Media. If you found this discussion helpful, please share it with your friends and family. Let's spread awareness and work together for more peaceful and prosperous Africa. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, I'm yours on Serio Makori, and this is Serio Media. Stay informed and stay empowered and take care.